So welcome to this month online higher education meeting. For your convenience, we have posted or will be posting the agenda on the chat. You can follow through the agenda. As usual, we take a few minutes to provide an introduction. Thank you for joining us in this platform. Unlock Higher Education has been around for several years. And the goal focus of it has always been to access to higher education for currently incarcerated students, as well as those students in the transitioning reentry space. We are a place of collaboration, a place of where voices can come with professional or lack of experience or all those uh, places and spaces that we come from. The diversity is what drives our space. And so we welcome those individuals that are like-minded in the sense of access to higher education. And today we have two great speakers, but before we get into that, which I'm super excited about, we can take the time to get to know each other. As usual, we take a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting to have breakout rooms. And if you say your name, your location, the organization, and what brings you to Unlock Higher Education, we can start breaking out into the rooms and give us a few minutes, 5 minutes or so that we can have those introductory discussions. Get to know some new faces, get to know some, get reacquainted with some familiar faces as to where they're at and what their work has brought them to today. Well, I was caught in the middle of a really good conversation, learning about the work that my fellows were doing in my group. I'm excited to learn that one of them is traveling to prison in another country. I don't want to put you on the spot, but I will, Oswald. If you let us know as to what you're going to be doing in your trip, even though congratulations on your new addition in your family, but yet you're still putting in the work even on this family trip.
Yes. Okay, y'all, let me make sure I'm right. How y'all doing? So I was just sharing with in my group about I'm going inside of a women's prison here in Nairobi, Kenya tomorrow. And one of the things I've learned since I've been over here, when you get out of prison, you have to get what they call a certificate of good conduct. And in order to get the certificate of good conduct, they run a background check. So when you don't pass the background check, you don't get the certificate. You cannot get a legal employment without the certificate of good conduct. So that's a systemic barrier that a lot of people face. And I was at another organization the other day and I asked them, what are the biggest factors they see with recidivism over here? And they were saying that the stigma that society still has from when you're system impacted, they haven't moved past that. And it gets so bad that some people reoffend just to go back to prison to have somewhere to stay. And I was like, and they say that's the number one. They can't, even when they try, they just not giving it. It's no second chances over here. Like how we speak about second chances, they're nowhere close to it right now. So that's to just share that out. And when I have all my experiences, I'm gonna put it together and I'll share it out in a small little mini report, what I've learned, some of the things that we take for granted that we have come a long way in, but also things we don't think about that's barriers. I'm hoping to partner with an organization to work with them to try to get policy on giving that second chance so people could get that certificate of good conduct. So that's what I'm looking to work with an organization over here to fight for. And that's pretty much it. I don't want to take up the meeting. I'm going to pass this baton back to the great Judith.
Thank you for that, Oswald. But yes, absolutely. I mean, and that's why it's so important that every little step that we take in the right direction towards, making things easier for individuals that have been impacted is a step that we need to celebrate. because this is hard work. This is long-term work, and the big wins don't come that often. So to not discourage and to see that movement and progress is being done, we really need to acknowledge and talk more about those small little steps. And Oswald, thank you for doing your part, even on your personal family time. So thank you for that. I'm sure the community there will appreciate it, and I'm sure that anybody here that can link with you and even just education and adding resources to that opportunity would be beneficial. That's what we are here for. Unlock Higher Education, that's what we strive for, is to having these conversations to bring people together so that we can see where we can align and we can support each other. Anybody else want to share their findings in this group chat that we were in? Or if not, then we'll move on to our guest speakers for today. All right, well, again, thank you for joining us this month on Unlock Higher Education. I am super excited to introduce two great speakers that we've had in the past. This is a continuing conversation that we had 2 months prior of unlocking access and equity behind the walls. Ben Wright and Dr. Jenifer Montag. Ben Wright is the Director of Disability Access in Prison Education of the Community, a nonprofit dedicated to expanding inclusive education opportunities for incarcerated individuals. A formal special education teacher and a person with lived experience in the criminal punishment system, Ben brings a dual perspective, both professional and personal, to his advocacy work. He currently leads a national initiative funded by the ECMC Foundation to assess the improved disabilities access in prison education programs across more than a dozen states and territories. This work includes conducting site visits, facilitating training for correctional educators, and co-developing and research-informed trauma-aware accessibility manual for post-secondary prison programs. Wow. Ben holds a master's in education and special education and MA in English literature, and is pursuing both an MFA in creative writing and a PhD in English literature, with a research focus on disability authorship and representation. He has published with JSTOR and presented at national conferences on higher education in prison, disability policy, and reentry. Welcome, Ben, again. And Jenifer Montag has recently become the inaugural Associate Director of National Center for College Students with Disabilities. Prior to starting at NCCSD, she directed, facilitated, and managed college disability services in a large doctoral university, a large community college, and at 2 medium-sized community colleges. Her doctoral research focused on the facilitation of college disability services for disabled students enrolled in the college's prison education programs. Throughout her professional work, she has also taught both graduate and undergraduate students at universities. Recently, she has been fortunate to teach the community's college first-year experience class inside the 2 million facilities prisons, helping students develop college and study skills and career goals. In her new role as the Associate Director of NCCSD, in addition to providing technical assistance about disabilities in college, Jenifer is focusing on strengthening her connections between disabled college students, the College Disability Services Office, and the State Veterans Administration, local rehabilitation services. Throughout her career, Jenifer has been focused on making sure disabled persons interested in post-secondary education have information, understand they can attend college, what services and supports might be available for them. This absolutely applies to college access inside the prison, and prisons have often overlooked population of higher than average numbers of disabled persons. Along with the resources of NCCSD, Jenifer wants students to know about the student-focused, student-run DREAM, that is Disability Rights Education Advocacy and Mentoring group as well, which I'm sure she will talk about a little bit further during her orientation. And welcome, both Jenifer and Ben. I'm so happy to see you guys again and to continue this very, very important conversation. Thank you for being here with us.
Well, thank you very much for the wonderful introduction, and thank you for having us for a second time, because the topic is so large. Just trying to get everything in the first session was very difficult. So the opportunity to share additional information and more details, we really appreciate that. Let me go ahead and share the PowerPoint. Okay, can everyone see the PowerPoint? Okay. So with that introduction, Ben and I will really not talk more about us because we really want to get to the meat and potatoes of our session today. Quickly, we're just going to go over what is accessibility because, you know, what it is and what it isn't. We just need to clarify that. And we're going to talk a little more in depth about the disabilities that we're seeing inside and some of the accommodations that we provide on the outside that we may have to try and provide on the inside in that prison setting. And then talking about some of the barriers to access that we've seen or heard about. And then some quick tips to help increase the access that you might be able to take back to your own programs and try to facilitate that. Ben, I'm going to turn it over to you.
I thought I would mention two updates. The first one is that we just received a $50,000 grant. The people out there are starting to realize, and funders are starting to realize how important this topic is. So now that we have 50,000 more, we can expand a little bit of what we're doing. So that's exciting. And I also just finished my MFA last week. So I'm not just doing it, I'm actually finished with it. So anyway, just throughout the entire presentation, you can think about the questions that are on this page. Maybe you can put in a chat some of the answers you might have. For instance, what barriers to education have you seen or witnessed in your education program? Any example of situations where a student can't get the same access as other students? For instance, you have classes on the second floor and your students can't physically get up there because there's no elevator. Or maybe your air conditioning or your heating system is broken and they're forced to take classes in a very hot temperature. I know once the air conditioning's been off for maybe 2 years now, and they're way down in south. It's very hot down there, and it's not conducive to a learning environment. So those kinds of barriers, if you've seen them. And then what types of disabilities are you seeing in the prisons? I think later we have a slide about different types of disabilities such as mental, physical, sensory, such as autism, Down syndrome, all the way up to intellectual disabilities, that sort of thing. And are those disabilities showing up in the classrooms as well? We studied at our last presentation that anywhere from 38 to 66% of people are documented having a disability in the prison system. And one thing I've noted, going around different sites around the country, is the impact of that number. I just gave a presentation last week to about 25 people, and just saying, oh, there's about 66% of people with disability. Most of them, you could see their faces, like, oh, they had no idea it was that high. And often we hear, well, that doesn't apply to us because we have no disabled students. But what disabilities out there are hidden or undiagnosed or just not being noticed? So just think about that. And if you have any thoughts or answers, you can type in the chat. John is going to go over what accessibility is and just give you a quick review. And John's much more knowledgeable about the legal side of things. I always joke and tell her that she should go back to law school because she's so quick and so efficient with her answers, but she said she's too old. And I said, you're never too old to go back to law school, John. Anyway, go ahead.
Well, thank you for that endorsement, but it's law school is a long time and a lot of money. So I think I'll just keep doing the advocacy on the outside. So very quickly, what accessibility is, we're not lawyers. So we always say, go talk to your legal counsel if you have any questions. So at a college or university, you would be talking to your legal counsel about the accessibility. You want to bring disability services in on that conversation so that everybody who has to manage the accessibility is involved in that conversation. But as to the legal requirements and expectations, your legal counsel at that college is the one who's going to defend the college in a court system if a complaint is filed. So you'll always bring them in for that conversation. But generally, what accessibility is under the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was signed into law in 1990. It was a bipartisan law brought forth by George H.W. Bush. And then Section 504 of the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, they're very similar. The ADA actually took a lot of their legal requirements from Section 504, which was back in 1973. The fact that the Section 504 actually limited the requirement for non-discrimination against people with disabilities only to people or organizations that received at least $1 of federal funds. That included all colleges and universities because student financial aid is considered federal funds, and 99% of all colleges and universities receive student financial aid. So that put colleges and universities on notice for not discriminating against people with disabilities. But it didn't do anything for public accommodations, which are things like restaurants, bars, gyms, shopping, any kind of store. They usually don't, receive federal funds, so they didn't have to follow any federal law. And they were still, there were still a lot of barriers. Couldn't get in the door, couldn't get to the location. They didn't have accessible restrooms. So the Americans with Disabilities Act really was a comprehensive approach at making sure all parts of society were accessible. Now, most prisons are under state or local control, so county jail or it's the state prison. So they would be under the 504 requirements along with the ADA requirements. But if it's a private prison, they would then fall under the ADA requirements. And so there's really not a lot of wiggle room, except in the federal guidance. The federal Bureau of Prisons would not fall under the Americans with Disabilities Act because they're federal, and federal entities are cut out of the ADA. But there is requirements in the federal law and guidance for accessibility for federal organizations. So I just want to make that clear because there is that little disparity that happens. What's really interesting is with the increase in Pell, this conversation should be happening because the Pell requirements are similar services as on campus. So on campus, our students can come to campus, enroll in classes, and get accommodations. That means students at the prison site should be able to enroll in classes and get accommodations as they would if they were on campus. And so we're trying to help, especially the administrators of the colleges and universities, understand that the Pell, and as experts in higher education and prison programs, you all understand it, similar services as on campus, that requirement really does include disability services. And so getting the administrators at the college to recognize that is very important and critical to getting the support for the students that are probably already enrolled in your program or want to enroll but have disabilities. Accessibility is the equal and equitable access to all programs, services, and activities. So any type of program or activity that the college is providing, including prison education, which is a program or activity the college is providing in a very different setting, that has to be made non-discriminatory and accessible. Now, we've heard, as we do this work in training other institutions on working on increasing their accessibility, we've heard of the pointing the finger at each other. So you have the prison who's saying it's the college's responsibility, and you have the college who's saying it's the prison's responsibility, and ultimately the student ends up not getting accommodations, and they're the ones who are losing out. And so the court systems, not in regards to prison education, but in general decision-making about the ADA and the applicability of the ADA, has come down with the non-delegable duty, which means each of those institutions has a responsibility, and you can't just say, well, the other person's going to do it. So the prison has an ultimate responsibility that their vendors, which most colleges are, third-party vendors, are not discriminating against people with disabilities. And that means ultimately they have to ensure that the college is providing that accessibility. If the college is not providing it, then the prison has to figure out and problem solve how to provide it. Ultimately, as they are offering that program, they're allowing prison education to occur. That's one of the programs that they're creating and embracing. The colleges have to recognize that it's a program that they're providing, and similar to the programs and classes offered on campus, that they provide the accessibility. And if anyone wonders, the ODRC, Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Corrections, which is our DOC here, they had a complaint filed in 2016. The resolution agreement spells out that education has to be accessible, and third-party vendors, our contractors, have to provide the accessibility. They can't discriminate. So there is previous case law that points to this. I want to spell out the differences because in education accommodations, we generally think of special education. That is only K-12. So most states end special education services on the 22nd birthday of the youth for high school education access. Even if you have a high school program, so some states are actually providing high school degree completion programs for any adult in their state, those accommodations would not be special education. Just because it says high school doesn't make it special education. It's the age that makes the difference. They would be seeking out and receiving accommodations very similar to adult education on college campuses. So we're also talking, some colleges are providing ABE or GED classes, vocational training. There's several colleges, several community colleges that are providing the welding programs, the welding training in the prison setting. So it's a college providing this class or training, and it's a vocational training, as opposed to the higher education degree classes that most of our programs are providing. And then we have community organizations coming in and doing professional or personal development like AA classes or NA. And we have some that are doing some art programs, music development, fine art, drawing, all of that. This is all education that we have to consider. How are we making that accessible? And then some classes actually have like the welding where it's a lab, you're in the lab setting where you're actually doing welding. Most of us have classrooms, but what is going on in that classroom? Are you teaching math using the board? And then how does somebody with low vision see the problems that are on the board so that they can follow along and understand how to complete those programs? So I just wanted to cover that very quickly. And then Ben is going to give some detail about his experiences and what he was able to observe while he was incarcerated, but also in part of what he does with the community, which is receiving technical assistance questions from a lot of those who are currently incarcerated. Ben?
Thank you. We have about 20 minutes left. Quite a few slides to get through, so I'm gonna try to go as fast as I can. Just so you know, there is a YouTube video of the first part of our talk. So if I mention something like there's a disconnect there, probably in the first video or whatever we don't talk about today, then there's a transcript attached to that. So if you're not able to watch the entire video, you can just look at the transcript and get a good overview. Anyway, I have this weird and unique perspective into all of this because one, I am disabled myself. I'm deaf and I'm also neurodivergent. So we have those. And I was also K-12 teacher for about 10 years. And about half of that was in a capacity where I traveled all over the state and consulted with different school districts on how to handle students with disabilities. And then, of course, I was incarcerated. And it took me from being the teacher to the student. And I would, well, theoretically or technically or whatever you want to call it, I was a teacher on the inside as well. They called me a tutor, but really I was doing quite a lot. And then getting out and now working back on the other side, and it's just a weird and enjoying perspective to have. So when we make site visits or we talk to students that have had the same experiences that I had, and it's just anyway, I just wanted to point out that weird overlap of experience and observations that I have made. Like I said, about 38 to 66% of individuals have been identified as having a disability in the prison system. The 38% number does not account for those who have acquired or manufactured disability because of age, such as hearing loss or vision loss or orthopedic disabilities and things like that, and also mental health is not considered or put into that 38%. The 66% includes the mental health aspects. I'm inclined to believe that 66% is a lot more accurate. One of the most common things that I hear from students, not just when I was on the inside, but now that I'm out, and we've been to, I believe, about 8 places now, and we have another site visit coming up next week in Hawaii, which is, outside of the 48 states, so I'm studying the bird program. But the most common thread that I hear from students is that they feel alone. And we're trying to figure out how to bridge that gap so they don't feel alone anymore. Another thing that I noticed is that sometimes educators tend to lump, if they see one disability, they assume or figure that everyone with that disability gets the same accommodation. So vision loss and hearing loss are the best examples of this. People tend to think that if you have a hearing loss, that means you know sign language. And not necessarily. Only a certain number of deaf people actually know sign language. So, Johnny and I have both experienced situations where someone will be like, well, we have a deaf student, so therefore we're providing an interpreter for them. But they don't actually know sign language. So, that's not going to be an effective accommodation for them, obviously. So instead, we could provide, CART, which is a system where they transcribe or caption in real time, or an FM system where they have some kind of assistive listening device that amplifies the sound or makes it more clear. Things like that. And same with vision loss. Not everyone who is blind is fully blind. They have some kind of degree of vision or vision loss. So how are we providing accommodation for them? Do they need to have braille? Do they need large print? Do they need some kind of magnifying tool while they're on the computer? Those kinds of things. So I'm noticing that a lot of disability services and personal education programs out there are kind of lumping things together. Um, I already talked a little bit about the mobility impact, getting to class and being able to be in the class and be productive. We talked about the second floor. We talked about the heating and the cooling. There's also the fact of how many people are actually in the classroom. Like speaking from personal experience, the classroom I remember there was a fire code, and it said a maximum of 15 people, but they actually had 30 people in the room. Not only is that a safety hazard, it's also not conducive learning environment. for the instructor or the student. If you are crammed together, you don't have that flexibility or opportunity to move around. Some students are not able to physically sit still, and some students are not able to process information while sitting there and trying to pay attention. Some individuals have to get up and move around to be able to process information. So how are they doing that when the room is crammed with 30, however many people in that room? So those are just some examples, observations that we've made so far. You can go ahead and go on the next slide. I'm going to pause for a second, let you kind of look over this, all the writing on this slide. Okay, so some of you might be wondering what a disability is in the first place. And basically, it's anything that impacts or affects one or more activities of daily living. So that could be walking, talking, sleeping, eating, breathing, basically everything that's involved with daily life. So that is what legally identified as a disability. I already talked about the degree or the spectrum of disabilities. The quote that we like to use sometimes is, when you meet one deaf person, you've met one deaf person. When you meet one person with autism, that person is not necessarily going to be like all the other people with autism. You know what I mean? So each person is unique and individual. I am completely deaf. I do have an implant, but I don't like wearing it very often. So people seem to misunderstand that just because I can talk and because I can communicate pretty well, that means I can lip read. Unfortunately, my lip reading skills as I get older have gone down quite a bit, and it gets awkward sometimes, especially with small talk, because I'm trying to communicate with this person, and they think I'm understanding what they say, and I don't want to have to spend the time explaining to them. I can't lip read. And then they're like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." The point is, everyone's different, so there's a different degree accessibility and accommodations that you provide. So I'm not going to go too in depth with anything else on this slide. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but John, do you want to add anything?
No, just that there is no list that the law says we have to accommodate. We have to look at how is the person impacted in those activities of daily living. And that includes learning, thinking, and concentrating, which all ties into education. And that's how education gets brought into this conversation. And those are just some examples in case you have a student who says something, you're like, I don't even know if that's a disability. These are not comprehensive, but just some examples. That's all we were trying to provide.
So this is a little off point, but if I pronounce your name wrong, I apologize. It's because I'm just going off the phonemes and the phonetic spelling of it. So don't shoot me if I say it wrong. But Ian in the chat talking about vocational rehabilitation and stuff. I'm just going to give my example really quick and let you guys process that and then get back to the actual presentation. So I have a master's degree, and I had that before I was in prison. So because of my disability, I qualified for VR's vocational rehabilitation. Basically, they are equipped to help individuals find a job, get job placement, work on resume skills and interview skills and all those kind of things. The VI counselor worked with the probation officer, and they both looked at each other and were like, "Wow, this guy is really smart, really up here, so he doesn't need those interview skills. But at the same time, he has a disability, so he's deaf, so he's not able to communicate with these people. So it was like I was in a rock and a hard place. And the VI services didn't quite know what to do with me because I don't need those interview skills like most people do. Still, one of the parts of our project is to try to help VR understand that there is a middle in between. It's not that everyone that gets out had no skills at all or the skills. So we're trying to bridge that gap a little bit. So yeah, good point. Yeah, thank you. Jen is much more the VR expert than I am, but speaking from personal experience, so these are the types of disabilities that you probably encountered. I mentioned in the chat earlier that ADHD is the most common disability that you encounter. I don't know if that percentage is in here. I think it's in our last presentation that we had first time. So yeah, I think you can just look at this and be like, oh, there's more people than I thought there were. I remember I was in a chow hall. You were sitting with a group. I was sitting with a group of guys. Uh, Somebody just out of the blue said, "Oh, you were a special ed teacher before, weren't you?" And I'm like, "Yeah, what about it?" And then the entire table, I kid you not, every single person had some kind of experience with IEP or not being able to get an IEP because their parents didn't take them to the doctor when they were younger, or they struggled with reading, or just different kinds of things. Just by looking at them and interacting with these guys, I would never have assumed. But it was just an eye-opening experience to have, 10 guys around me of different, backgrounds, different racial backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds. So yeah, just looking at this show, again, it's prevalent and it's out there. I'm ready for the next slide. Oh, you want me to do this one too? I keep biting my cheek. Anyway, I will let you read this while I'm trying to get my cheek away from my teeth. Jen, could you take this for a second?
Sure. So just as an example, and I use this with students, even students who are deaf and hard of hearing, I explain how, and oftentimes they haven't had this knowledge, nobody has explained it to them, how their hearing loss may be impacting them. So if you look at the diagram on the right, it is a table that has the sound amplification, so the loudness, which is in decibels, going from 0 at the top to 120 at the bottom. And at 120, we're hearing airplanes. That's how loud an airplane is 120 decibels. Whereas rustling leaves are about 0 to 10 decibels. And then from the left to the right is the frequency, which is the pitch. So low frequency sounds like trucks rumbling are lower frequency, 125 hertz, and louder at 100 decibels versus birds chirping at it's about 6,000 hertz and about 10 decibels. So if you have a higher frequency hearing loss, you might struggle with speech sounds, and we call that the speech banana, that circular, it looks like the shape of a banana in the middle from about 20 decibels down to about 60 decibels, ranging from about 250 hertz to about 8,000 hertz. That's where speech is made. And that is where, when we talk about a person having a mild to moderate sensory neural hearing loss, their hearing loss is between 20 and 60 decibels, but it could be that entire range. They can hear somebody is talking, but the actual speech sounds are not clear. So they may hear somebody's talking to them, but they're not able to understand and process what those words are, because that is exactly where all speech sounds exist. So that's why I'm sharing that information.
I'm not going to go in depth with this because we have 8 minutes left, and I would love to hear some questions or feedback from you guys. So just put these in your head, and I'll recognize most of you in the chat. So if we're making a site visit out to you, think about these questions and just we'll collaborate. If I don't know you, I would love to know you. You can email me or Jen, and we can start talking about your program and what disabilities have shown up in your classrooms and what process you have between you and disability services. And also, it should be kind of like a triangle, but more than that, really, between disability services, the Department of Corrections, and higher education program. There's also financial aid, there's registration, so many different offices that need to collaborate. And again, through my observations of different programs out there, that's one of the disconnects. Is one office or another, for whatever reason. It could be political, it could just be one office doesn't work. It could be that this particular office didn't even know that there's a higher education program, and that's really nobody's fault, other than, needing to collaborate and not work a little bit more. But just think about the process that you have. Jen, I'm going to give you about 3 minutes to go through the last couple of slides because we really want to hear from the audience. So have fun with that.
So accommodations are the things that are put into place to reduce or remove the barrier that the student with a disability is experiencing in that environment. And I just have some images on the screen just to show that. ASL, the Braille note taker with refreshable Braille display. In the center is captioning, so closed captioning on the screen for television and movies and videos that you might have in your class. And then print Braille, which may or may not be allowed in the prison because 1 page of print text equals about 3 pages of Braille. So a 50-page document would be about 150 pages of Braille paper. And we know that DOCs often don't like to have their residents actually having a lot of paper in the cell. And at the bottom right is the FM system. That's an assistive listening device for somebody who has a hearing loss but needs amplification and more clear sounds coming from the teacher speaking rather than picking up the fan that's in the room that's overlaying all the speech that's happening in the classroom. The FM system, assistive listening device, does help with that. The teacher wears a microphone, the student wears the receiver. They can wear an earbud or they can use a loop that connects directly into the hearing aid, sort of like Bluetooth, a little precursor to Bluetooth, and the sound goes right into their ear and they can amplify it up to 60 more decibels than what the speech sound is that the teacher has. I wanted to touch on some technology access. One of the things, if you have technology in your classrooms, in your education program, if you're deploying like Microsoft Office tools across that technology, make sure that whoever's imaging the machines keeps the accessibility features from Microsoft Office on the system, because built in is they can increase the font size, they can increase the cursor size. Down at the bottom, I show the accessibility mouse pointer and touch, and I don't know if you can see my actual mouse icon. It's very large and it's purple so that it's easy to see on the screen. That's one of the built-in accessibility features that students might be able to use that helps them. Color filters, so they can, if the white background is glare for somebody with a low vision issue, they can reverse it so they have a black background and white print on it so they can read it easily. Additional technology tools. JAWS is a screen reading program for individuals who are deaf or have low vision. It requires internet access in order for it to engage the license. NVDA, which is the purple icon in the center bottom row, that's NVDA. It's built to be brought in on a flash drive and it can be loaded onto the system. It's a screen reading program, almost the same as JAWS. It's freeware and it doesn't require a license, internet access to ping the license. Natural Reader, Read and Write, Natural Speaker are all other icons I'm showing. Those are text to speech. They read aloud text-based materials. Those are all internet dependent. I've heard that Natural Reader and Read and Write do have ways, if you purchase the software, of bringing it in and not require the internet access. I don't have more information about that yet. Top right is an image of the portable CCTV magnification device. It will magnify print underneath it and it can flip up and magnify print on the board. So remember that math problem. How is a student with low vision supposed to do math when the teacher's writing the problem on the board and they can't see it? With this device in the classroom, they're able to flip up the magnification and increase it so that they can follow along as the teacher's working on the math problem. Below that is a large print and talking calculator. So for students in math classes who need large print or graphing calculator or talking calculator, that's one of the tools they can use. Magnification's handheld. These are all handheld magnification devices that do not use glass, because glass is, usually forbidden by the DOC. These are high quality polystyrene flexible magnification. An accessible table. How are the students who use wheelchairs supposed to be at a table if the table's too low and they can't get underneath it? Large print, high contrast keyboard, very helpful, especially if a student has only use of one hand and they're trying to type their paper. Being able to see the keys and hit them more easily than the smaller keyboards we have on our computers is helpful. And then the C pen, which is a scanning pen, it is built for corrections use. Ohio, the state of Ohio DOC actually adopted it, and they've deployed it for their adult education classes across the state. It can only be used within the classroom, but it also allowed me the opportunity to bring it in for our students who need tests in audio format. They can use the scanning pen and hear the test questions read out loud. These are just some things that have been provided by other programs for their accessibility. I was able to get an FM system approved. I was able to get the portable CCTV device approved for use in our classrooms. And then basically connect with your disability service provider at your college. Engage. How are the students supposed to engage in that interactive process? How do they even know that there's accommodations available? Multiple ways of notifying the students. Have a flyer posted. Have a syllabus statement so that it says how they are to request accommodations. If you have a new student orientation, have an application form at the new student orientation so that they can connect with the disability services provider. And then think about what your program is providing. Remember, one of the things that we do that we celebrate a lot is the education, the graduation from the college. So make sure you're making that accessible as well. And then we've included resources. I have links to all of those technology devices and general resources. So if you want to learn more about disability access, we've included that.
Well, thank you guys for that presentation. I know we're on time with our meeting. I don't know if the audience has a few questions that we may want to bring in just to close us out. Any questions? This was a lot. And again, it's also very important. So I appreciate you guys sharing in, and more importantly, I appreciate you guys sharing all those resources and all those tools that people can look towards to and reach out to you guys in case they want more information regarding those tools and how to access that. I know that in several of the institutions where I was at, there wasn't much of an access. And so the person themselves had to ask ADA to send them tools, send them things that they can use to be able to receive the classes. So it's a big impediment, and I'm just happy that there's a lot more out there being offered for people to be able to achieve these, the learning curve. And with that, I want to just close this out real quick. Thank you again for being here. I wanted to let you know that also we have meetings every month. We are always offering different speakers in the space and the work that they're doing and learning in our community how to create a space for access to higher education for individuals inside and individuals coming in the reentry journey. We also have our active CWAC program going on, coalition going on. I urge you guys to look into it, and if you're interested, enroll. We're still always looking for individuals to participate. We have our first group starting in the next couple of weeks, so we're excited about that. And it's, again, a space of learning what's happening in your state, what's happening in your community, how we can bring that together to support each other in our different communities so that we can be all at the same, most effective level of providing higher education or access to higher education. So it's about the best practices in your community and how you can achieve those. If that is it that I have from my end, anything else that our steering committee or our leadership may want to add before we close this out? Oh, we're
Just a
good.
big thank you.
Yes.
As always, Jen and Ben are changing the world right now.
I would say, not to take away from Jen and Ben, and I appreciate hearing from you guys so much and hearing again, we are so privileged to have you. I would also like to say that the new CWAC coalition group is looking to have its first meeting at very soon in September. So if you have applied to that, go ahead and give us, or go ahead and know that something's coming down the pipeline very, very soon. And we are very, very excited about what that program will also bring for us. Thank you guys all for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Don't forget to reach out to Ben or Jenifer if you have any more questions or would like additional information. I believe they put their emails on the chat.